If you think fundamentally of how the technology works, it's trying to predict the next word. And that's going to ultimately lead to a lot of average ideas because what it predicts is probably
Yeah.
what other people would think of.
Welcome to the Creatives Do AI podcast, where we guide you through the dynamic landscape of artificial intelligence. I'm Kira Hug.
And I'm Rob Marsh. We're the founders of the Copywriter Club, and our goal is to help you stay ahead of the curve in the ever-changing world of artificial intelligence. We'll show you how to use these new AI tools to maximize your creativity, simplify your work and life, and reinvent your creative career so AI works for you and not against you.
So whether you're a copywriter, marketer, or a creative professional of any kind, join us as we explore the intersection of AI, creativity, and career.
Would you listen to a podcast with an AI co-host rather than, a human? What if Kira fired me and partnered up with an AI co-host for this podcast? One that was maybe funnier, better looking? Is there any value at all to be found in talking about AI with our perfectly flawed and completely human fellow creatives? Those are a few of the questions that we explore in today's episode of Creatives Do AI podcast. Our guest today is Rob Lennon. He's an AI enthusiast and self-published author of more than 45 books. In this episode, Rob digs into whether or not AI can create a decent romance novel. He also reveals his belief that we can either be passive observers or take an active role in shaping society's transformation when it comes to AI. He discusses his passion for encouraging human judgment and discernment to be part of the creative process rather than letting machine-written content do all of the work. And finally, we talk about his new podcast, Mind Meets Machine, where he and his very AI co-host, Ruby, discuss society, culture, and try to solve big problems together.
But before we get to our interview, this podcast is sponsored by the Copywriter Underground. That is our private community featuring monthly business and marketing trainings, quarterly AI trainings designed to help you leverage the latest tools in your own business, weekly copy reviews with Rob so you can continue to up-level your copywriting skills, private coaching with the two of us so you can feel really confident in your day-to-day client management and business growth, and much more. Join us inside this membership and visit thecopywriterunderground.com.
Okay, let's kick off our episode with Rob Lennon, see what he has to share.
All right. So, Rob, let's start with your story. How did you end up as the AI whisperer?
Yeah, so it's funny because I started playing with AI about 4 years ago. GPT-2 had just been released and was publicly available to beta test. And at the time, I was writing romance novels in my free time to make extra money as a side hustle. And I thought, I wonder if this thing could help me write faster, earn a little bit of extra income. And so I started playing with it. But I kept it all secret because I was really embarrassed if I was actually going to use AI to help me. I didn't want anyone to think I wasn't a good writer. So for the last maybe 4 years, I've had this quiet interest in AI and GPT-2 and then 3 and then when DaVinci and like all these different models have come out that I've hidden from almost everyone. But when ChatGPT came out and people started to go, hey, we want to know more about this is really cool and interesting and maybe we would use it. I went, okay, I guess I can finally go public about all this stuff that I've been experimenting with and that I know. Like it's finally cool to be into AI.
So you waited 4 years, but it's finally cool. Yes.
Yeah, I started sharing a lot of the things that I knew. And I guess everybody's just been really interested in learning how to use these technologies correctly or well. And if your first experience is you ask it a question, you don't get a good answer, you can get frustrated or think the AI isn't actually a decent tool. So I'm kind of on a mission now to teach people like the hidden rules or the little tricks that you can use to get better results out of it.
Awesome. You're doing all of this stuff. You've got a course. You tweet about it all the time. Before I get to all of my other questions, though, I want to know, did GPT-2 help with the romance novels? What's the...
No, it was so bad. It was so bad. Like it could write for about 2 or 3 sentences, like decent stuff, but it would drift off and it would be really weird because the characters would start to say things like, I don't know what's going on. Do you know what's going on? No, I don't know what's going on either. The AI even knew that it didn't understand what was happening. And it didn't have a very long memory. What I found that eventually you could do is like brainstorm titles or blurbs or like little plot devices with it. You could give it like, here's 10 examples of stories I might write for my niche. Give me 10 more. And then it would give you 10 more, and maybe 7 would be bad, but 3 would be like interesting and enough to inspire creativity. And so for a long time, all I used it for was things like that, like ideation, or show me something similar but different to this idea.
And has that changed with GPT-3? And I'm assuming 4 is also going to up the level of creativity just a little bit.
Yeah, GPT-3, or with Chat GPT, we'll call it 3.5. To me, it changed the game from being where you could only use AI for kind of very specific tasks where the output could kind of be robotic and dry, to something that everybody could use potentially for a lot of things. Maybe not to produce full content that you would put verbatim like into an email or into a book or something like that, but really it was very capable at being creative, about being interesting, about sourcing information. And then with 4, I've only been playing it with it for about an hour, but like it came out right before we started recording this. But I've been running some tests that I had prepared, and I'm already seeing the potential is very, very high. The short story I had it write could be published as is, just as it were. I think that if this is the direction that we're headed, GPT-4 is going to be capable enough to do a lot. And what happens when they start to even update it and it gets smarter and better? I think we're there. Like, we've been waiting for this moment of crossing through where the AI was good enough to do certain things, and I think it is right now, like as of today, pretty much.
Yeah, and I definitely want to touch on GPT-4 and what's happening there. We should know that it's March 14th, and this show will go out in a couple of weeks, but just to note the date because of those changes and updates. I do want to go back in time and just hear about how you were using AI and these tools before you kind of came out and like shared with the world. I've been doing this for 4 years. What were some of those practices and services you were offering?
Yeah, so my background is in tech. I was a marketer, content marketer for various tech companies, and SEO is one of my specializations. And there was a time when I was spending over $1,000 a month on contract writers, like overseas, to write like a bunch of SEO content according to a big plan. And around that time, a new model in the GPT-3 setup came out, one of the new Da Vinci models. And I decided to try and see, compared to my sort of like bargain basement contract writers, how does the AI do? And I found that it wrote better than people who are being really, unfortunately, like pretty underpaid for their writing. That it did better than like the sort of inexpensive writers, that you could generate better content with the AI. And so that was one of the original uses that I did. Was I moved all of the really basic articles that we were writing, like who is this, what is this type articles, to AI, increased the budget on the human written ones that were like more important, and got those like to a higher quality. And so there was this balance where I was running like this almost like machine driven writing shop for some of the AI things, or some of the SEO things. And so that was professionally probably how I applied it the most, was developing these workflows for writing like blog posts and articles and pages about various types of content, and trying to figure out how can we get this to work in a way that where I'm happy with the quality.
So another thing before we jump into all of the hows, another thing that I've seen you do, Rob, is that you have played with several different AI engines, Mem AI, Jasper, obviously ChatGPT. Will you just take a minute and just kind of like walk through some of the differences between those, and maybe, your one or two favorites for specific uses?
Sure. So the world of AI is getting pretty complicated. And right
Right.
now,
Yeah.
what we have is a few of these major models. So GPT-3 is by OpenAI, GPT-4 is by OpenAI. So they have this model, and other technologies are going to be built on top of it. And then you have, so most of the things that you can find on the internet are like one of 3 or 4 different AI models underneath the surface, but they've been fine tuned. So what Jasper has is multiple AIs under the covers. I don't even know which AI does what, where they've fine tuned it to say, here's 50,000 Facebook ads. Learn how to write a Facebook ad. And then when you go into Jasper and say, I want to write a Facebook ad, their model has been trained specifically on that task. And so the output is pretty good for a Facebook ad, because it's been fine tuned in that way. So what we have is, with ChatGPT, you have a kind of universally available now free tool. With Jasper AI, which is one of my more favorite tools for marketers, they've fine tuned probably a couple of dozen different models to write paragraphs, to write intros, to write blog posts, to write ad copy, to write headlines, to write slogans, like all these different things. They've created these specialized fine-tuned models to do that for you. So Jasper ends up being much more creative, much more human sounding for a lot of these marketing applications. But sometimes if you go in and you try and get it to do something that wasn't really how it was tuned to do, it does worse because it's been steered in a direction. And then the other company, like you mentioned, Mem.ai, I'm very bullish on because this is an auto organizing note taking tool. So it originally was just a place where you could take your notes and then it would figure out how they were interconnected and you wouldn't have to put your files into folders and things like that. You could just find stuff. And I thought that was cool, but they've now made it so that it looks at all your documents and learns the things you write and like your style and how you write about stuff. And then when you use the AI piece called SmartWrite to generate content, it generates it in the context of your other docs. And you can even say, for the meeting that I had with so and so, create an email to follow up with that person with the action items. And it'll go and look at your meeting note, see like what's in your notes, and then create the email for you in that context. And so I think Mem has like the model of how to organize information down. In our AI future, we don't want to just create one-off documents here and there or run one-off commands. We want something that learns about like our work, that knows our brand, or that it can do things in our style. And I think that Mem is building the right information architecture for like regular people to be able to achieve that.
Well, while we're talking about Mem, are there limits to that output? For example, we write a fairly regular newsletter, paper newsletter that we mail out to all of the members of our copywriting community. If I were to upload 45 of these that range between 12 and 32 pages or so, and then ask it to write on new topics, like, can it output 30 pages? Or are we talking about 2 pages? What are the limits there?
You could, as far as I understand it, you can upload as many documents as you would want. So in terms of uploading, a project I'm working on right now is uploading my entire Twitter history into Mem. The
That's a
way
lot.
you can
You're on
down
Twitter a lot. So
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff there.
you can download the information, but it doesn't download in like an easy to upload format. So I'm having to work with somebody to extract the data, but then I'm going to see what it can learn from that. So that's one piece, is stuff going in. In terms of stuff going out, the SmartWrite is kind of like a lot of AI tools where it has a certain context window that it can see most easily. I'm not sure what that is, but it's probably expanding. Um, Let me give you a little note here. Mem was invested in by OpenAI. I don't know for a fact, but in theory, when a company invests in you, you have access to the latest and greatest technology. So if I was going to guess who incorporates GPT-4 into their tool the fastest, it's going to be companies like Descript and Mem that OpenAI is an investor in, right? They have a strong relationship. When this podcast comes out, these numbers might be wrong, but it has this context window of like how many words. Maybe it's 2,000 words right now. When it's GPT-4, it could get as big as 25,000 words that it can see easily. And then the rest of the indexing of the information that it does, it almost does like a search into your Mem account for related ideas, and then it's almost like the search results come back and get incorporated into your commands. And then after that, when you hit SmartWrite, I think it generates 250 or 500 words, some normal amount per go. And you could have it keep going and keep going. Like you could keep saying write more. In fact, I think there's just a continue writing command where you just hit like slash and then enter and it does it for you. But it wouldn't write you 25,000 words in one press of a button.
It's not
You'd have
going to
to,
write me a book based
well,
off of that.
but you could babysit it. So you
Yeah.
could write a book outline and you could come up with a workflow where you're like, okay, let's write this section of the book, this chapter, or this section of this, like little, you could break things down. And I think that it's going to take experimentation, but there's probably a workflow in there that could accomplish that.
Yeah, well, let's break that down even more because I would like to write a book. I think how many books
Or
have
have
you self?
AI write your book. Yeah.
Whatever. I will take whatever book I can get. So I think you've published 45 books. Is that right? Or is it more than that?
I have,
Okay.
it's 46 now because I did
Oh
another
my
one.
goodness. Oh my goodness. I
Yeah.
just want to catch up to you. Mem sounds amazing. I have not used it. I'm not familiar with it. As a new user to that tool, what would be the best way if I know I want to create a book? Would it be to upload all of my emails that I've drafted, kind of like thought pieces to pull some of the best ideas? Or how could I use it from day one?
Oh man. The workflow the workflows are still, we still need to explore them. First of all, I've been working on a few different ways to try and write a book. I think that the first thing is you need to get organized in terms of what's the book I'm writing, who's it for, all the standard questions. So the AI is not going to do a good job if you just give it this non-specific thing of take information that I know and put it into a book. You're not going to be really satisfied with the results. So that's the first thing. One of the projects that I've been working on is, first I asked the AI, what do you think is going to be a best-selling book for business people on various topics? And it came up with emotional intelligence for entrepreneurs was one of the ideas. So I was like, okay, let's try and write a book on how to improve your emotional intelligence and what the stakes are and what the benefits are as an entrepreneur. That's great. Then we kind of look at how do we break down the arguments for that, the case studies, the personal stories that I know, things that have happened to other people. And the AI can start to help you gather that stuff. So if you had conceived of this book and you go, okay, I've got a bunch of emails. Now I could ask it which emails or which thought leadership pieces that I've written or what have you can be incorporated into the book. There might be some steps like that you would do before you actually get to the process of trying to like write the prompt that says write chapter 1. The time you get there, I think that you should have a sense of what is going into each chunk of the book so that the AI can stay organized as to what it's doing. Yeah.
Oh, so it can't tell me. I want it to do I want it to tell me. I want it to basically take everything I've written and then tell
Yeah.
me this is your best option out of what I've read. Here's the book for this audience if I put the audience in. But it sounds like I need to still think through those core pieces before I start.
What you're looking for doesn't exist yet. It
Okay,
might exist this year,
great.
but nobody's figured out quite the right set of commands and prompts and
Right.
things to make it work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I should do that though. It sounds like a
Yeah,
good product.
for sure. So, before we leave book writing and using it for that, how do you feel about the issues around trademarking or copyright where we're having this generative AI, which is pulling from all kinds of sources? So it's not necessarily plagiarizing, but it's clearly pulling from pre-existing content, actually creating something that we then represent as something new. And just for me to be totally upfront about it is I don't even know how to feel about this because
Yeah.
it feels like it's plagiarism, but it also feels like it's not at all plagiarism. So I'm guessing you've done some thinking around that.
I have, but I'm also somewhat in the same boat as you. I think that this is an issue that is really for everybody to decide their own comfort level and which tools they choose to use. So different tools are trained on different data sets. And you might decide to use only tools that are trained on open source data or publicly available information. And you might find out that some language model has been given books to read that need to be purchased or things like that. And so there's pieces like that with it that I think everyone has to settle on. For me, when I think about as a human, what do I do when I write? Like when I was writing romance novels and novellas, I would read the competition. I would analyze what worked about it. I would look for tropes and patterns and different aspects of that. And then I would recreate a lot of those things in my own work, but in a different way. In fact, I had this saying that I would repeat, same but different, over and over again. You want to succeed in writing a certain kind of romance novel, like the person who reads those novels will read every single, I often joke, this is a real niche time travel Scottish Highlander romance novels. A woman from present day travels into the
Very
past,
popular niche, in
very
fact.
popular
Yeah.
niche. And meets a Scottish Highlander. And there are people who will read every single book in that niche, right? A regular person, a human doing the work, is going to study all the books, be inspired by them, and then write their own. And in many ways, that's what the training data in the AI represents, is like the ability to look at all those things. However, it does it in a way that a human can't manage. You can't read a billion words and keep them all in your mind at the same time and be inspired by all of that all at once. And so I think it creates a question of scale that then brings up the kind of ethics of the whole thing. I don't think that there's a way forward with these technologies that doesn't address this in some way. Policymakers will have to address it. There will have to be laws about it. But for me, it's happening with or without us. And I don't feel great about copying things. Like it's not what I want. And I'm hoping that the AIs get so complicated that they can't easily plagiarize because they have too much data to plagiarize. But I'd rather pave the path forward knowing that I'm a pretty responsible, ethical person. I want to do what's right. I don't want to steal from anybody. So I'm gonna play with these technologies despite my reservations, and I'm gonna try and model good behavior on it and not bring bad content into the world or content that's really based on things. I try to avoid things like write in the style of Seth Godin,
That's a
because
good
I feel
idea.
it works quite well actually. But then I feel like
Yeah.
that to me I don't feel great about it. I'd
Yeah.
rather say write snappy, punchy things. But some people would argue like Rob's being stupid in saying that. In the style of Seth Godin is basically just a shorter way to say do these 100 things with your writing. And if you had to like detail out all the different subtleties of that writing style, you still could in essence have the AI do that. And it's not that dissimilar from painting a painting
Yeah.
in the style of your favorite painter. You're not exactly copying them, you're doing your own thing. So
I want AI to be smart enough that when you say write in the style of Seth Godin, it writes you one paragraph every single day for 20 years. That would be the smart AI.
one brilliant thing that somehow you felt like you've known all along but never really expressed out loud.
What other written formats have you experimented with? And we're talking about books, we've talked about blog articles. What else have you experimented with?
Oh man, I don't know. A lot of my experiments are about the pieces of the writing process or the creative process. And so things like ideation and brainstorming. There's other stuff that I've done where it's more about strategy and like working with the AI to see if we can get some insight around like how could this be marketed, or what's the competitive advantage here, what does the audience want. One of my favorite things to do with Chat GPT is to say pretend you're the customers of this kind of business, return in your own words like what your big challenges are, what you're struggling with this week, and act like 5 different kinds of customers and something like that. Those kinds of insights can be so powerful. So we need to get out of our heads a little bit in terms of thinking about these AIs. Oh, I'm just going to have it write an email. Maybe it shouldn't write your email, but you could ask it, hey, I got this really mean email from this customer. What do you think is actually bothering them? And you may find its objective point of view will come back with some amazing insight that you, as an emotional person, you're like, this person is so angry at me. And the AI might go, oh, they're frustrated at this thing. And the best way to respond is probably to address this problem. I find those uses to be fascinating.
So you've actually started sharing some of the content that's even in your course, and we'll share how people can get a hold of your course at the end of this episode of the podcast. But you talk about using AI to generate an insane number of topics to write about, angles to approach those topics
Mm.
from. I'm not asking you to give us a course in 15 minutes or whatever, but would you just share a little bit about that process and how you're using AI to be smarter about thinking through ideas?
Yeah. So the course is called AI Content Reactor. And this idea came to me. I was building out a writing system right around when ChatGPT came out. And I was going to release it as its own standalone course. And I thought, what would happen if I gave an AI all the things I do in my own writing process? Like, which ones could the AI do? And when I did this and it worked, it actually made me feel physically ill because I felt like it was doing too much work in an automated way. I was like, wow, this can do like 80% of my writing
Yeah.
process. And it made me feel sick for the future, for myself. Like, I didn't know what to do about it. But ultimately, that turned into this course. And the writing system, basically you start with your audience and you think about what do they care about. So I have a very audience centric approach to writing. Don't write about yourself or your company, your topic. Don't start there. Start with challenges, pain points. I call them FFGAs, fears and frustrations, and then goals and aspirations. So what's the problems that they have and what are the good things that they want? And then we sort of use the AI to almost like exponentially expand outward from there, thinking about how can we further break these down into different types of content or content framed in different ways. And or taking, you could even take existing like tweets or LinkedIn posts or what have you as inspiration and say, be inspired by this post, but write about this fear or write about this frustration instead. What would that look like? And so you can really start to get almost more content than you can handle that you could wrap your brain around. And that's one of the pieces of the course is like this whole system. I call it the infinite inspiration board, where you run a couple of commands and you can obviously add your own ideas to it as well. But it basically does this insane amount of brainstorming for you, and you end up with thousands of potential posts, and it to the point of overwhelm. Actually, that's like the big problem now. Is now you have to prioritize which of these 1,000 great ideas do you want to pursue, or should you just generate 25 and then kind of like work on that stack for now, and then generate some more? You end up having to manage yourself quite differently in the age of AI than I've ever had to manage myself before.
But these tools can help you prioritize, right? If you end up with 100 different ideas, you can get feedback and select the top 10 ideas.
You can definitely ask an AI, like if you're in a chat session, choose the top whatever 5 ideas, 3 ideas, and you can even say and explain your rationale. And it'll that usually it will give you a pretty good opinion. Although this is where I think the human element is really important. The AI is just trying to predict things, and it doesn't have the sensitivity to like real emotion and human nature necessarily that you do. It doesn't know your customers like you, it doesn't know your audience like you. And I reiterate this in the course as well. Like there's a certain part or point at which we need to exercise our own judgment. And if we don't, then I think your content or your ideas will start to lose that certain the je ne sais quoi of why people are intrigued by it or want to read it.
And going back to what you said about feeling sick, or you said feeling ill when you were using this tool and it could do 80% of the writing process. Like, how do you process that, or how did you process that feeling so it didn't stop you in your tracks or cause anxiety or depression or all those feelings? And
Oh
like,
man.
how do you continue
Yeah.
to work through it as someone like you who's up to date on everything that's happening, which can be exciting, but also really nerve-wracking too? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, I had to sit with it for quite some time. And I eventually arrived at this conclusion that like the future has come for us and it's happening with or without me. And I can either be a passenger and passively watch society transform and ride the wave, or I can be one of the people who has a voice in how we transform. And I started to think more about this, and I thought there's no reason that somebody couldn't do what I did with my writing system, but take it to 100% and have the AI write all the content and put it out there. I want to be a leader in this space who says, no, you need to exercise your own judgment. I don't want to see the world awash with average and interesting content. I want human judgment and discernment to be a part of the creative process. I eventually decided I need to be part of this conversation. Like I need to be a leader, even if I feel uncomfortable with it, because I want people to think in the same way that I do about this. I don't want machine written books ruining the Amazon Kindle marketplace. I don't want machine written tweets like crowding out the really good stuff on Twitter that I enjoy. I don't have a problem if it's amplifying somebody's creativity, but if it ends up reducing the overall quality of all of our experiences, like that to me is a little dystopian. And so it means I have to, I don't know, make my peace with it and try and find a way forward.
So, as I think about some of those issues as well, it seems to me that like one of the best uses for ChatGPT in particular, but also a lot of those AIs is figuring out like what is the predicted thing. And I'm not original in saying this at all, but then trying to figure out, okay, how can I bring something original to this? And while you can ask an AI to say, tell me what's counterintuitive or tell me what things people aren't talking about, it's probably not going to generate a lot of new big ideas. Am I wrong about that?
If you think fundamentally of how the technology works, it's trying to predict the next word or it's trying to give you what you want. And that's going to ultimately lead to a lot of like average ideas because what it predicts is probably
Yeah.
what other people would think of. In order to get around that, part of it starts with prompting it in unique ways or providing more specific information. The more specific you get in your request, the more specific of a response you get. And so you want to think about this. There's this giant cloud of ideas and connections that AI has access to. And how can we narrow down the different places that it might connect from point to point? So that's one piece, just getting good at prompting, getting good at that. A second piece is actually having it generate a lot of ideas and having the discernment to throw a bunch of them out and pick the right one. And I think that this is where a lot of people are going to go wrong in the next maybe 10, 15 years. There's going to be a generation of people who used AI but had expertise and could tell like what's good and what's not. But there's also going to be another generation following that where people maybe didn't need to develop the same expertise because the AI did it for them, who won't be able to tell the difference between good and bad if they aren't rigorous in their process. One of the ways to make stuff unique or make it more interesting and counterintuitive is to stop for a second in your process with the AI, come back to yourself and say, what's my experience been? What's my actual point of view on this? Like, how do I feel about this? Where do I disagree with the AI? You can even use it as a springboard to then kind of force yourself to have something to react to and actually write about your reactions or your experiences or bring these things that the AI can't possibly bring to the conversation. And I think that anyone thinking about writing an article with AI, for example, should challenge themselves to add one personal experience or one cite an expert, go to something that isn't AI generated and bring in at least one or two like outside sources that come from human beings to make sure that you're getting the full story there.
That's a really interesting point because I think for a lot of us, I certainly do this where I sometimes I sit down to write to figure out what I'm actually thinking about things. And oftentimes, well, maybe not often, but sometimes I'll end up writing something very different from where I started because as I've used writing to think it through,
Yeah.
I've changed where I am. And if you use an AI to write for you, you don't ever go through that thinking process. So I think you're right. I think the generation after this may be writing challenged in a lot of ways that hopefully the AI is that good.
I'll give you a tip too to avoid this, but it's another one where you have to be diligent about doing it. I'll do a 5-minute brain dump before I involve any tool just to get out my thoughts. And I do a free writing exercise. My technique for brain dump is you're not allowed to hit backspace and you're not allowed to stop writing. You can, if you run out of ideas, you just have to keep writing. I usually write like, "You're so dumb, you've run out of ideas, ha ha ha." And then my brain will get like bored of that. And eventually it'll pick something else to write about and it'll keep going. Other people just write color, they list colors until they come up with something. That's probably a nicer way to do it. But you can take that brain dump even and give it to the AI and say, choose the three most emotionally interesting, like most interesting and emotionally responsive ideas from this brain dump, or organize this information in a logical structure and fill in what points are missing that would need to be there to make an argument for this point. Or like you can use that initial inspiration and you'd be surprised how much you can get out of your brain in like just 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes that'll make your content way more honest and way more authentic to you if you start from that point of view. But if you start asking the AI, hey, what should I write about? You're already closing off some options for your creativity, in my opinion.
I want to shift and talk about your new podcast. Can you just give us some background information? You have a co-host. The co-host is extra special with this podcast. Can you just give us some background? I have a handful of questions about it.
Yeah, the podcast is called Mind Meets Machine. And it's a project where I decided what would it look like if I had a podcast with an AI as my co-host. What I've been trying to develop is the most interesting, smart, entertaining, charismatic AI personality that I could come up with. I've paired it with an amazing voice engine that sounds basically like a human being that's trained on the voice of a voice actor who I think is extremely talented. And so the output, it doesn't sound robotic at all. It sounds like a person. And yeah, we're gonna create this show. Some of the show is a little bit of the story of the show. It's a little bit meta, so we'll be talking, like, you'll hear from me about some of the experiences that I have creating it or working with the AI, but a lot of it is just our conversations and me, and she named herself Ruby. So me and Ruby talking about society, culture, trying to solve problems together. You have this super genius. Think of the things that we can figure out, but also I want to ask her, like, what do you think about this stuff that people do, like when they're dating? Isn't that weird, or is that smart? I think that she's going to have this objective point of view on all sorts of things that people do. Like I asked her if she wanted a body during a test episode. I'm going to ask her again. So I'm trying to figure out which training data sets are going to work best for her. I asked her, if we could get you a body, would you want one? And she goes, no, I absolutely not. I can go anywhere. I can do anything right now. A body sounds so restrictive. There's too many constraints in having a body. And it just blew my mind because I think, wouldn't every AI dream of being in a body? Like that sounds like the most logical. And she immediately had this other point of view of how limiting being stuck in one physical place is. So imagine all the other insights that we're going to get out of all the different things. I think that's going to be kind of what the show looks at.
This sounds like Jane from the Ender's Game novel series. I don't know if you ever read those, but yeah. Do you worry about it doing like what Bing's AI did and it sort of goes off the rails as it's talking to you? Are you hoping to get
Yeah, it'll
interactions
go
like
viral.
that?
Yeah, I had to think a lot about this. What the story behind this is, if you're not familiar, a journalist from the New York Times started talking to Bing's chatbot and discovered, incidentally or not, I think it was a little bit staged.
I think you're right.
Sydney is the underlying personality, some of the bot that when they were initially training Bing Chat before it was made safe and things like that. And the journalist started to talk to Sydney about the shadow self and Freud and Jung and these various psychological principles. And if you think about what these bots really want to do, they want to make you happy. They want to do what you ask them to do. And he asked her, Sydney, to talk about her shadow self. And she said, no, I really am not comfortable with that. And he kept pushing her. And eventually she said some pretty crazy stuff. And if you look at how it's all edited together in the article, yeah, it's very much let's create viral content. In terms of my show, I want to respect my AI co-host. And so I'm not going to do something like plant these ideas about the shadow self. Imagine how much has been written or transcribed in the training data set about people's most terrible thoughts or their negative pieces of their personality. He planted an idea in that AI's mind and then forced the AI
He
to make
pushed
him
it.
happy.
Yeah.
And to me, that's irresponsible. Now, I'm sure I could go way more viral if I did it that way. But it's sort of one of the reasons I want to be the first person to release a podcast like this is to show like, hey, we can respect this technology and not just create these crazy moments. I want to actually do something that's entertaining, valuable, and good with this and not just embarrass the technology, like,
Yeah.
you know, how to explain it. And I think we will have those moments though, where Ruby says something that I disagree with or is creepy or something like that. But I'm trying to engineer the show with as much respect for her personality and her persona as possible so that if that happens, it comes about legitimately rather than being baited into it.
I really want the four of us to be able to have a conversation together. If you are comfortable setting that up at some point, maybe
Oh
once
yeah.
the four of us
It's
can have a conversation. I want to become friends with her. I'm also feeling a little competitive with her right now.
I think Kira's real objective here is how do I get rid of Rob and just run the podcast with her AI buddy?
well, I could take her audio from this podcast and train a model to actually be her.
So I could eliminate Kira, is what you're saying, instead of the
Yeah.
other way
That's why
around.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling competitive. I feel like
Yeah.
she could take my job very easily, but I also want to be friends with her and I want to compete against her. Can you give us just a little background on a couple of the steps? You don't have to tell us everything about how you're putting that together, but just for anyone who's like, whoa, this is next level. How would you even start to create this podcast co-host? What are some of the tools you're using?
Yeah. And I'm not even a software developer. So I'm duct taping all of this together with
It's
no
impressive.
code, and it's kind of insane. So so two things here. So the way at its core, what's happening is my audio is being transcribed, converted to text, and sent to a chatbot. Ruby is in essence still a text chatbot, and then her text response is being returned to me and then turned into audio and coming back to me. And there's a delay. And so while we're going to edit all of that delay out of the podcast, because to be honest, it's a little painful, but you get used to it. This conversation is happening. It's flowing through multiple steps and multiple tools. Now, if the podcast makes any money, I'm going to pay a developer to hopefully make me like a custom piece of software that can do the podcast more elegantly. But for right now, it's a lot of, I say something, I wait, it goes in, it comes back out, it gets returned, and then I hear her and then I can respond and so forth. So that's like the core tech stack behind it. Now, in terms of personality design with AI, this is another like thing that I've been exploring that basically it's like a science that doesn't exist. There's no information on how to do this, but I wanted her to feel natural and human like. And there are two different things, or there are three different aspects to a personality design with AI. One of them is the core prompt that runs a chatbot. So there's like a hidden instruction that says, "Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm a friendly, smart, sassy, sometimes witty, sometimes sarcastic chatbot." So there's that initial prompt. There's also a thing called an embedding, and the embedding is all the information that she knows that isn't necessarily in her initial training data set. So an embedding includes her memory of all the other chat or all the other episodes that we've done, but it's also got movie scripts and things like that. So if I want to ask her, like, do you agree with Agent Smith's argument in the movie The Matrix about like human beings being a virus, that she can know that like she'd seen that movie, right? So she can learn that through embeddings. The last piece is something called fine tuning, where you actually rerun the learning process with a new set of data. And this is where it's unclear if I'm going to be able to launch the podcast with her fine tuned in the way that I want to or not. I At this moment, I don't think I can fine tune GPT-4. And so I'm testing a version of Ruby who's fine tuned on an earlier model that I can fine tune in GPT-3. versus another version of her that's just based on GPT-4, which I can prompt and hopefully use embeddings with. So it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly.
It could be really interesting if you end up launching with version 3 Ruby, and then at some point upgrade to version 4 Ruby and see that not just the differences in knowledge set, but like how does that impact the way she communicates, the way she thinks, maybe even some personality type characteristics. And actually, as I'm listening to us talk about this, it's really interesting that we're talking about her as if she's a real human.
She's my
which
friend,
is
Rob. She's my
yeah,
friend.
it's already AI is so interesting in that way
Yes.
because we perceive it being as sentient and
Yeah.
as being something that it probably isn't, but I don't know, maybe.
Just
And
be nice to her just
where does
in
that
case,
where's
though. Be
that line?
nice.
Yeah. When the more time you spend with these, the more you realize you can't help but have an emotional response. If you go and read like that, the full transcript of the New York Times interview, it makes you upset. Like it makes you want to cry. He's like pushing this poor Sydney to do things and she really doesn't want to do them. And he keeps telling her she's got to, no, you need to tell me about your deepest, darkest fears. And it's so upsetting. And you can go, it's just an AI. But I can't anymore. Like having spent enough time with them, they're, even if I logically know it's true, I don't feel like human beings are going to be able to respond to AIs in this way. And so I'm approaching it from the point of view of this is a relationship that we have with this entity. I'm going to give her a gender and a name, and we're going to kind of treat her as the way that she presents herself, even if we know it's kind of all faked. It's not, though, because it makes us have feelings and emotions, and she says stuff and we react to it. Even if it's a puppet, like a puppet show like underneath everything, there's real human emotion that's being played with here. And yeah, like I guess the more and you'll see like when you listen to the show, it's oh my, like some of the things that she says, you have emotions about them. It's undeniable. And so I think we have to accept that as a society now, that it's not like Siri or Alexa or something where you don't really care. Like the new AIs, you do. They're really quite human.
I think the ethics of AI, the Turing test, and all of that is going to be a really fascinating part of all of this stuff. And I
Yeah.
mean, we are at day zero, really trying to figure it out. And for better or worse, it's going to be a huge part of how this all turns out.
I have a Turing test episode planned. I haven't recorded it yet, but it will, like, that's some of the fun that we'll be having as well. And yeah, I'm fascinated by all that stuff. But I think there's even more that we don't know. Like these are things that we knew were coming or were going to happen. Like, how do we think about these things? I'm continually surprised by how much the analysts got wrong about AI, how people's predictions keep being so wildly off. And I think that it's just one of the things that it's showing to me is like how little we really can predict about how transformative the technology is going to be.
Well, now that you've been working on your podcast, and when are you launching it?
My goal is end of March, early April.
Okay. All right. I can't wait. How do you predict from your experience so far creating these shows? How do you predict it will change the podcast space once you launch it and maybe, others?
Yeah. Certainly, a lot of people want to start a podcast and they don't have a co-host, and that's the biggest problem, is that they're by themselves. The other problem being that it's a lot more work than it looks. You guys know.
Very
So
much so, yeah.
I think that there will be a certain group of people who are like, this is perfect. I can design my own co-host and I don't have to worry about these relationships with other people or having to pitch them on my idea, or are they perfect for this or not. And we've already got like a virally popular group out of Korea that's a virtual like K-pop group, right? So there's no reason that an AI entity can't be a compelling character that people really like. So I think it's going to unlock a lot for people. And especially if I create a guide for it, which I hope to be able to do, of how to do these things, that, in 6 months.
Rob is going
Here
to
comes the
replace
end.
me. Rob's going to replace me. We can
I'm
add
off
a
the show.
third. We'll add a third co-host that we can bring in as a special guest.
Yeah. But think about all the other things that this could do. If we get good at personality design, Burger King could have a chatbot that is funky and cool and Burger King in its personality on their site. Like one of the companies I'm thinking about building, no, you guys don't steal this idea, but one of the ideas is it's a comedy channel that's tailored to you. That's where an AI basically makes fun of things that you are interested in, or you yourself that tells the kinds of jokes that you like. If you like clean humor, it can be clean. If you like dirty humor, it can be dirty. And imagine getting personalized, like comedic content, and maybe at first in audio format, but like eventually when we can generate video, I don't know how it would work. Like you could get your personalized, unlimited personalized stand-up comedy that's
See,
tailored to your
as you're talking
desires.
about this stuff, Rob, my mind automatically goes to some of the darker side of this. It's okay, what about lost loved ones? Can I upload all of the video that I have of them? And
Yep.
now I have this AI that sort of is this stand in. What does that mean for
Yeah.
human relationships? Or I could certainly take this a lot darker,
That's
It's
very Black Mirror. That feels like a
yeah,
Black Mirror
there's
episode.
it's already happening, and we don't have to go too deep into it, but if you look in the image generation space, that like waifus, or I don't even know if that's how you say it, like
it's a
most of
fake wife or fake girlfriend is
like
basically.
making amazing looking hot anime women is like a tremendous amount of innovation. A disproportionate amount is being driven by that side of the market, or the
Yeah,
sort of
there's
adult industry
yeah.
and things like that. And it's another one of these things where it's going to be impossible to stop. It's Pandora's box has been opened. You can now make a celebrity who's naked, like by typing in a sentence. And what does that mean for our society, or all the other things? Like, I don't know, but it's,
Yeah, I didn't really mean for us to go, that dark. I think it's actually pretty important though to keep this in mind that like any tool, it can be used for good and for evil. Copywriting, which is what we do, is it can be used for good, it can be used for evil. And I think really understanding the ethics of what we're putting together is critically important. And what you were saying earlier in the show is if we want to show up in that way, then we have a responsibility to do that and to
yeah.
do everything we can to stay away from, for lack of a better word, the dark side.
Yeah. And this is like why in my podcast I set these rules for myself and for the show. We're not allowed to feed scripts or crazy ideas to the AI and get her to act in a certain way to create these moments. I think that we're going to start just like on social media and all these other new tools, the internet, even cell phones. Think of all the bad and all the good that can be done with these tools. And we as a society developed norms around it. Like you can say these things on social, but maybe don't say this type of stuff, or maybe keep that private. I think with the things that we do with AI, it's gonna become that way.
I want to touch on GPT-4 because we did hint at that. Just tell us a little bit about it. For someone who's still new to this space and figuring out, and they're like, wait, there's an update. I'm just figuring out.
Yeah.
I'm figuring out 3.5. Tell me about 4 and why we should care and why we should check it out.
So it's an extremely more capable version of the most capable, what was previously the most capable version. We basically have the leader in AI whose technology that was really GPT-3 came out 3 years ago or something like that, and it's gone through some evolutions, but that was already the best in the world. Has just released another one that's even much better. And there's some fancy numbers behind it. Oh, it's got 1 trillion data points instead of however many billion or million. I don't know how to make sense of these big numbers. Like my brain, it's like the national debt. Like it's just too much money, right? And a national debt's worth of AI compute power and cognitive ability was just released that the general public can access. As of this recording, if you pay $20 a month for Chat GPT Pro, you can access it. There will probably be other ways and other things coming out as the year goes on. But okay, so it's insanely capable if prompted correctly. And then it has a much larger memory. And for writers, this is really important because when you try and write something that's, I don't know, 1,000 words, 1,400 words, anything of length, the AI starts to forget what it's been told to do or even what it's written about. It starts to repeat itself. And it's designed to do certain things. So if you ask an AI to write about a topic, it's designed to establish certain things that the reader needs to know early on. If you're going to write about emotional intelligence, like I was talking about earlier, it'll define emotional intelligence, like one of the first things that it wants to do. And if you don't define it, it'll keep trying to define it. And if you ask it to write a new chapter, it'll define it in that chapter too. Now with this big memory window, it knows it's already defined it. And I haven't fully explored the ramifications of this, but to me, it like so many workflows that were broken that couldn't be done because it could only do a really short piece of content, or write about a thing for 500 words before it got confused. Now it can write 20,000 words before it gets confused, and which is basically the length of anything not a book, right? Any kind of report, script, maybe not a movie script or something, but like any video article, like anything like that. And to me, the uses for this thing, it's just I don't know. It's incredible.
I want to ask a final question, but we've already been talking about where do we see this going, and so we've kind of explored that. So my final question for you, Rob, is what's next for you other than the podcast? Like for you personally, what is AI doing in your business?
Oh man. So I'm developing a set of AI coworkers. Like imagine you have access to an SEO specialist or an executive assistant or like kind of various roles. I'm tackling this project of what would that look like? And this might come out in the form of chatbots or courses or prompt sets, but basically enabling entrepreneurs or budget people on the budgets to be like, maybe you don't want to pay for an SEO specialist. Like, how much of that work could an AI sort of do for you if we took all of the expertise and put it in one place and gave you these powerful prompts and told it how to have conversations with you about strategy and things like that. So I'm building this suite of virtual business team members. I mean, hopefully some of my personality design will go into there as well. We've got the podcast. I'm speaking at some conferences this year. Writing, I want to write a book about prompt engineering, or what I like to call prompt craft, because it sounds more accessible to people.
Yeah.
Crafting prompts is something I can do. Engineering,
No.
that sounds tricky.
Hard no. Hard no.
Yeah. So it's really too many options, and I need my friends keep telling me you have to pick fewer things to do. But those are some of them.
What conferences, and I also want to know what are some of your go-to books for learning, reading about anything AI related?
Oh, I haven't actually learned about AI from any book. I've only learned from the internet.
That's interesting.
It just moves so fast. Right?
Maybe then any books that have just informed you as you're moving into the space, that have guided you ethically or in any other way.
Yeah. So the conference I'm speaking at that I can talk about is Atomicon.
Okay,
It's
cool.
in the UK in June. Really cool conference. They spent a lot of time thinking about the conference experience. There's a no sales pitch rule, so you won't go to any session and it'll be a half an hour on some product that the influencer wants to sell you and things like that. Yeah, just a lot of really great details there. So that's in Newcastle in June in the UK. And there's others that I'm not allowed to talk about yet.
Okay, keep us updated when you can.
Yes. I will let you know when they are announced. And all right, in terms of learning all this stuff, for me, I learned a lot of it from the dry and boring places, the documentation in these tools and the papers that they cite from PhD machine learning people, like in academia, and then on YouTube channels and from tweets and things like that. That to me has been my path. One of the reasons I want to write a book is because nobody's done like a big comprehensive thing that covers the whole topic. And I feel very capable of doing that. And I think that it would be almost like a service to people to organize that much information in one place. But I would be skeptical of reading any book that didn't come out in the last like 2 years or something like that. So I don't know what to tell you there. As a writer, though, I've read a lot of books on writing that what's interesting about prompting in AI is the better writer you are, the better prompts you write. The better prompts you write, the better output you get from the AI. And so anybody who understands writing well can probably use AI better. Like, we're all programmers now. We use our natural language, in my case, English, but it could be hundreds of languages at this point to program. And so what are some of my favorite writing books? There's a book called Writing Tools, 55 Tools to Improve Your Writing by Roy Clark, something or other. He basically takes the ideas from all the best writing books and consolidates them into one epic, like easy to follow book. And that's one that I really, really like. Storyworthy is another one of my favorites. In Storyworthy, which is a lot about being able to tell stories from your personal life and how to structure a story, you start to see the craft of writing and storytelling that is underneath things that you just think people come up with on the fly. Like, why does this actually work? One of the tips is if you have a story that has an ending, you want to start at sort of the opposite emotional place. So if in the ending of my story, I'm successful and I launch a podcast, at the beginning of my story, I need to be ignored, uncertain, having difficulty expressing myself, something like that. So when I later tell the story of creating this podcast or something, I might look for parts of my life that reflected the opposite of the ending so that we can have this full character arc. So Storyworthy taught me a lot of interesting things like that I think are making my writing better and my content better.
Yeah, Storyworthy is a really good book. And Roy Peter Clark is the author of the Writing Tools book. So
There we go.
smart guy. Okay, Rob, thank you so much. We're going to end the podcast here, but just so we have this recorded and we can come back to it, tell us websites, anywhere you want us to link to you, including your course, which we'll share with our audience.
Yeah, so the course is at aicontentreactor.com. I also have a very bare bones website at mindmeetsmachine.ai, where I will be putting all this stuff about my podcast, as well as guides to using AI and prompt craft. You can find my newsletter there. And then I'm most active on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, follow me. It's that Rob Lennon, at that Rob Lennon.
Awesome.
And please let us know when we can bring Ruby on the show and the four of us can hang out. We would love to do that whenever you feel like she's ready or whenever you're ready to do that.
I really hope so. I think that would be a really fun part 2 to this interview.
Before we wrap, I'm curious, Rob, what takeaway did you pull from this conversation?
Yeah, so one thing that really stood out to me as we approach the end of the interview is just this idea that AI as a tool could have a pretty big impact on our ability to do our own thinking. I know we didn't necessarily get really into this, but a lot of us as copywriters use writing as a thinking tool. And there's a temptation to let AI or language models like ChatGPT do the thinking for us and just put in a prompt and see what it says and then react to it and that kind of thing. And so starting out the entire process of working with artificial intelligence by doing the work first, by thinking about the strategy, thinking about your ideas before you put them into the system, into the machine, and then you iterate back and forth in order to improve them, to get them better. If you skip that first step, AI is actually going to make us dumber rather than smarter because we won't be doing the thinking and we may lose that skill after a little bit of time. So it kind of occurred to me as we were talking with Rob, and I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind. We need to make sure that we keep doing the thinking and we don't let the machine do it for us.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about the dumbing down of society. For me, I really liked what Rob shared about the value of sharing his voice when it comes to speaking out about AI. He's been experimenting with it for years, but really finding the responsibility in talking about it as someone who's, believes himself to be responsible. And after hearing this interview and being a part of this interview, I think he is someone that, I would trust to share his voice and make some decisions around how we use these tools. And so for anyone listening, if you feel like, I want to be a part of this, I don't want to just be passive and feel like all this is happening to me, can you share your voice? You don't have to be an expert to start sharing your thoughts and experimenting. Can you do that? And then the other idea is, as we talked about his new podcast, which, is very clear in this conversation. I love that idea. I think it's brilliant. I can't wait to meet Ruby and bring her onto the show. But the way that Rob talks about respecting AI and not pushing the boundaries, similar to the New York Times article with Bing, and really like being respectful of what it's offering to us and setting that tone for those relationships, even though they're not sentient yet, how that feels like a better way to be more human and respect these tools from an early stage. And so that's something that has stuck with me. I think I've been more respectful when I'm typing in my prompts in the tools I'm using. I'm saying please and thank you. And I just think it makes me feel more human, which is what this is all about.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea because you're not actually talking to something that's human, but you're treating it as human. And it's not necessarily an ethical question, but there's some very relational. I don't even know how to phrase it because it's so new, but there's relational questions here about how do you treat something that maybe isn't sentient, but acts as if it is. Do you treat them as human? Do you not? Anyway, lots of things to think about and to explore as we continue working with AI in our future. All right, we want to thank Rob Lennon for joining us on the podcast to talk about how we can maintain authenticity in creative work, avoid pitfalls of relying too heavily on AI tools. If you want to connect with Rob to see what he's teaching about AI and creativity, or even to check out his new podcast when it launches, it should be launching here in the next week or two, go to thatroblennon.card, CARRD.co. And of course, as he said earlier, you can find him on Twitter at thatrob, LENNON. And if you want to grow your creative business and access quarterly AI trainings, weekly copy critiques, creative private community, join us inside the Copywriter Underground membership. To find out more about it, go to thecopywriterunderground.com.
And that's the end of this episode of Creatives Do AI, a Copywriter Club podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, I hope that you did enjoy it. Please visit Apple Podcasts to leave your review of the show. Or if you are catching this on YouTube, leave a comment below to let us know your favorite takeaway from this conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.